Welcome back to Open Line. We were talking about the effects of state preemption here in Nashville. That's where the Metro Council passes something and then the state legislature comes in and basically overrides it. We have with us Ann Barnett with Stand Up Nashville, Colby Sledge, Metro Councilman, District 17. And let's go back to the phones here. Let's go to Joe. Hello, Joe.
Yep, I'm here.
Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking my call. I think the younger generation sometimes has a hard time understanding that the United States is a republic and that states are free and independent, and that the voters in those states vote for their legislators. So cities can vote, counties vote. I mean, it goes throughout the state, but states are still free and independent. So when the legislature can say to one city, well, no, we don't really think you ought to be doing that, I think that's what a republic does. It's because these cities have already put them into office. These legislators are there because of what their cities have voted them to do. So the fact that, I mean, I know you're disappointed that Tennessee's a red state, but maybe you can move to a blue state and try to change their cities or accept what they do. It's just, you live in a red state. That's what happens, is that the legislators are free to choose and decide what the state does. States are free and independent.
And by the same token,
your opinion about that.
By the same token,
go ahead.
Yeah, by the same token, is it okay if the federal government then requires certain things of states that the states don't want?
Oh, they certainly do. They actually put a drinking age in place that you're 21 years old and you can't drink until you're 21. The federal government's done a lot of things to states.
And you're okay with that?
Well, you know, I think some of it has to do with safety. I mean, you have to believe that, you know what, it's probably a better thing that kids wait until they're 21 to drink. But also, cities are also free to bring a lawsuit against the state legislatures. So if the city disagrees with it, they can say, you know what, I'm going to bring a lawsuit against the state legislators saying that they're burdening us unnecessarily.
All right, well, let's talk about all that. So his thing is, well, they're elected there. They have every right to kind of Bigfoot the cities. Let's start with that. What about that?
Sure, obviously they can do it. It's a matter of whether they should, right? Or whether the people who live in Tennessee think that they should do this. I feel like, look, when we think about big issues in our country, individuals can feel very powerless, right? If we look at the border crisis, if we look at families being separated, if we look at wars that our country is in, me as a person living here in Nashville, Tennessee, I feel pretty powerless to have anything to do with that, about that, besides voting once every couple of years. But at our local level, it's completely different. There's so much more of an opportunity for civic participation. I mean, we've got council people that live in our neighborhoods. Their contact information can be found on the websites, right? We can bring local churches and local organizations to meet with folks like Colby and other folks in office to come up with solutions together. And I feel like that's the true essence of our democracy, right? Is having more folks get involved and more folks finding solutions together. And so for me, when we have an institution that comes in and quashes that, that's a problem for me. Whether or not they're legally allowed to do it, of course they are. But for me, I want to fight for a world where folks can come together and come up with solutions for their neighborhoods and for their cities. We're not trying to tell the rest of the state what to do. We're trying to fix problems in our own backyard. And to have state legislators from Humboldt or from Unicoi or from other folks telling us what we can and can't do here in our own neighborhoods, that feels like a big overstep for me.
And I think, you know, one of the things I think about a lot is, several people have said this, but I remember pretty distinctly former House Speaker Beth Harwell, who's a Republican, saying, you know, that the government that governs closest governs best. And so when we talk about our local government, we are the people who are literally getting stopped in the grocery store or, you know, on the way to work saying, hey, has something happened with litter in my neighborhood? Or are we going to make sure that construction noise is, you know, kept to certain hours? Or, hey, I can't afford my rent anymore because it went up again and I don't know where to go. And so we're facing those issues, and those are the people who live down the street from us. in my case, people who lived literally across the street from me. Now, Joe brings up a good point, an interesting point about cities having the opportunity to sue the state, and that's very true. We as a municipality or anybody could sue the state of Tennessee over a certain issue, saying that they didn't have the jurisdiction. One thing I would say about that is, unfortunately, when a state preempts a city and then a city goes and sues, that's your tax dollars fighting both sides of that argument, right? It's going to fight the city side of that argument, and it's going to fight the state side of that argument. And to me, I think there are appropriate times when a city has to say, state, you've gone too far, we're going to take legal action. But for the most part, it's in the best interest of our residents to come to a solution that works best for our residents.
Have we done that? Have we taken the state to court? Have we filed a lawsuit over a time they've preempted us that you're aware of?
Truthfully, I can't recall one. Not in the time that I've been in office.
All right. Let's go to Lucy. Hello, Lucy.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm going to try to fit in tonight. I'm just going to throw it all into the fan here and just try to fit in. This is what I'm going to address the two council people there. One's a council person and another one's on a local political group or a local action group.
Right.
Correct? Yep. Okay. Because I didn't catch the beginning. What I'm going to tell you is this. This is what you young people don't understand about our country. I heard the mayor say last night that we don't have rent control because the state doesn't allow it. Well, we used to have our mayor in Nashville, and this is a historic fact, set the rent control to control and regulate stuff. And back in the 1840s, our Congress of the United States set laws so outside money could not come in, buy up businesses, collapse them and destroy our economy, come in and buy land and drive prices of things out of control. Outside money, say, from rich countries like the aristocracy in other countries. But in the 50s, the 20th century, we start deregulating all that stuff in the 1950s, in the early 1970s, and in the early 1980s, where we threw all that to the wind, and now we allow super secret PACs to contribute to political campaigns that control our state politicians. Everything now is a secret. I pose this question. I wonder how many people, not only in the state of Tennessee, but throughout the South, have any idea that their home telephones are going to be ripped out of their homes soon, and they all have to use cell phones. And that's only occurring mainly in the South and maybe one or two states outside, because the state legislatures have allowed corporate money and outside money to come in and tell them what to do, and the hell with the rest of us.
All right.
So you young people, listen up now.
Lucy?
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you. So Lucy, I think, has just called us all young. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. All right. What about this issue? The bigger, I don't know about the telephone thing, but she is bringing up a good issue of corporations with a lot of influence there in the legislature can maybe do an end around local governments.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we see a lot, and you know, we and several other municipalities throughout the state, we're part-time, right? We are part-time council members. Almost all of us have other full-time or part-time jobs, and truthfully, we don't see a whole lot of quote-unquote corporate influence because we have kind of, you know, we're one municipality, right, instead of a full state. What happens at the state legislature is corporations hire big lobbyists and big agencies to write legislation that not only fits for Tennessee for their purposes there, but they write it for the whole country. And there's been a lot of recent media coverage about the fact that word for word legislation gets dropped into legislatures throughout the country because they're funded by the same corporations or the same agencies who are funded themselves by the corporations. So yeah, Lucy's absolutely right. The rise of big corporate money and hand in hand big corporate influence in our state legislatures has been profound in the last decade.
Right, and I think that Lucy's right as well when she talks about who, well, she didn't bring this up, but for me it comes to who's benefiting from state preemption. who would benefit from the kinds of solutions that we would try to pass at a local level versus who's benefiting from keeping things the way they are, right? Not allowing inclusionary zoning, not allowing the minimum wage to rise, and a host of other things. And if we look at who's that benefiting, it's normally large corporations, large developers, folks who are making money hand over fist in this city, and they want to keep things the way that they are.
What have you done as far as studying the impact of preemption? Who is most harmed? Do you have some information about, you know, people that are most harmed by this, and kind of drill down into that?
Absolutely. Well, when we talk about, let's just talk about work, for example. We've mentioned the minimum wage, but there's a whole number of other things that have been preempted in our state when it comes to jobs and work. So the minimum wage has been preempted. Predictive scheduling, that means that your employer can't change your schedule week to week without a certain amount of notice. Wage theft, that means when you work for a certain amount of time and you don't get paid what was agreed to pay you. Cities are preempted. We are not able to do at a city level anything about that. Paid sick leave has been preempted, so local municipalities can't require any paid sick leave. Local hire we mentioned, and some types of union labor agreements are all preempted by the state. So when we look at folks who would benefit from raising the minimum wage, it's low-income folks. It's folks that are working below, you know, $12 or $10 an hour right now. And when we look at folks in those industries, they're overrepresented with women in those industries, people of color, and then if we look at women of color are extremely impacted by state preemption. It's the same if we look at affordable housing, right? The same folks are, the same low income, low wage folks are most affected by rising rent prices, gentrification, and being pushed out of the city. And so those are the same folks that would benefit from the policies that we're trying to push, but we're not able to.
And do you feel that as well?
Oh,
this is kind of a corporate end around of local government.
It often is. And so, I mean, just to build on what Ann's saying, so somebody who looks like me in Tennessee, their hourly rate is going to be about double what a Latino woman in Tennessee makes per hour. So preempting the local minimum wage does nothing for somebody who looks like me, because somebody who looks like me is making well above. But for somebody who is not like me, not looking like me, they're going to be profoundly and disproportionately impacted. A lot of times, I don't even know that that's a consideration. I think it's just thought that, you know, like Anna said, maintaining the status quo. If it's working for one group, that group then wants to ensure that it continues working.
You as a local councilman, you can hear from the individuals who are impacted, the individuals who are working for minimum wage and can't pay their rent. In the state legislature, they're hearing from bigger type businesses who are saying, well, that'll mean we can't hire as many people, that'll hurt the economy, that kind of thing. I guess it's a question of who they're hearing from, and that's where we are here.
Oh yeah, well, and I used to work in the state legislature, and I can tell you the groups that were working for people who were making below the minimum wage may have had health issues that were requiring them to be out of work, and then they were losing their job because they had no protections. The people that were fighting for them were also working at a lower wage and were completely overwhelmed with the number of clients that they had to work with, whereas a larger corporation had several people working for them who could go to several different legislative offices at once and ensure that they were always getting face time with that state lawmaker.
All right, we have to take a break. Reverend Fuzz and others, hold on the line. There's the number if you want to call in, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.